Hi, Simon. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I have been looking to this conversation for quite a while. Really excited to have the time to sit down with you. We've not known each other very long, but it feels like we've known each other forever at the same time
I
because
know,
we
right?
learn quite a lot of things, which is good.
It really does feel like that. It's funny when when you meet somebody for the first time and all of a sudden you just click and you have really long, in-depth conversations and you think, crikey, I've only known you. I don't even know what it's been months, hasn't it? It's not even, well, I wouldn't even say 6 months.
No, I came back to the Professional Speaking Association March, and I think we'd kind of been introduced just about that time. So yeah, a few months, and
Yeah.
just it's really exciting now to be really back engaged in the speaking circuit and just spending time with people who push you on and really drive you to succeed. So
I know, it's so
that's
nice.
what we can share today.
So yeah, we met at the Professional Speakers Association. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to get over fear and anxiety when you're speaking in public. I was just saying to you before we hit record that I think this is going to be a really, really good chat. So I'm really looking forward to it because I know I've struggled with this topic in my past, and I know you have too. And now we've both overcome it. We're all right. We're going. So there's hope for everybody, isn't there?
There is, and I think sometimes you hope that there isn't, but I always go back to the fact that when you talk about public speaking skills and presentation skills, we emphasize the word skills, and a skill is something you can develop. Some people are naturally talented, they have maybe a gift for it, but that doesn't mean the rest of us have to suffer our whole lives. You can learn to speak better, you can learn to communicate better. And like anything else, driving a car, whatever you want to equate it to, it's a set of skills that once you isolate them, you learn how to do them, you weave them together and they coalesce. You're then able to get on a journey with it. And that's really been the story of my entire journey, is just taking apart what it is, working out the bits that are effective, the bits that aren't, putting the bits that are effective together, and gradually just discover that you can do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You really, really can do it. We're both testament to that. So we're going to unpick that. But before we do you want to introduce yourself? Because I bet you can do it a lot better than I can.
I'll do my best. So, hello everybody. My name is Simon Day. I am a presentation coach and public speaking and communications trainer. I am from West Yorkshire and born and bred. Absolutely love this part of the world, God's own county. And I'm on a mission to help people understand why they're frightened of speaking and why they're frightened of presenting, but that they don't have to be, and that they can overcome the barriers that stand between them and delivering an effective presentation. And when we get that working within organizations and teams, then we can really further the purposes and the intentions that we have for those organizations, wherever they exist, and make the world a better place. And that's really why I do what I do, because I once lived a life in the shadows, without a voice, scared, alone, afraid. And because of some extraordinary people and some wonderful opportunities and some great experiences, I was able to conquer my own fear. And I'm now living a life that I didn't think I would live. And if I can manage that, then other people can manage that too. And so I'm really speaking to those people who, like you said, might be at that point in their journey where they are anxious, they are afraid, they are worried, they feel like there's a lot of pressure on, they don't know where to turn, they don't know how to get help. That's where I come in. And I really love going into places and just helping people challenge those preconceptions they've got about public speaking and getting to a point where they feel like I can now deliver a really good presentation. And they then see the results that start to come from that, and confidence breeds confidence, and it just becomes a cycle from there.
No, and it's so good to watch. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it myself, but I've also seen it happen with other people, as I'm sure you have. And there's just nothing better, is there, than just seeing somebody come to life and own their stage. So this is going to be good. So if you're listening to this, grab your notebook and pen because I bet we've got loads of tips that we can share. Right. So you've mentioned a few times that you once were living in the shadows, you didn't have a voice, and you really struggled with stage fright. Let's go back to that point then. Um, Tell me all about it. Tell me where you were, what you were doing, how did it actually manifest itself? Let's kind of get it out of our system. Let's see what's going on.
So the earliest recollection I can give you is when I was a year 3 student at primary school.
Mm.
And that was the days when your school report was handwritten by your teacher.
Right, yeah.
And I remember in the different boxes for the subjects, I think on at least on 3 occasions, this teacher wrote that the quality of my written work would be much better if I didn't chat so much in lessons. And so I remember the teacher having a bit of a hard go at me about it. And I remember my parents having a bit of a go at me about it. Stop chatting so much, focus on your work. And so from my earliest recollection, talking became a punitive thing, and it was something that got you in trouble. So over the succeeding years, I learned to speak less and I learned to work more. And my work improved, my writing improved, my English became my strongest subject. But by year 11, I had some really good academic attainment, but no voice, no confidence. And because I was contributing, to the school by way of, working really hard and trying to be a good student, I was elected head boy at the start of year 11 of the school, and they asked me to give an assembly. And that was to 300 of my peers, plus teachers, plus senior staff on my own. And I can't even remember what I spoke about in the assembly. I just remember dreading it weeks before, not sleeping, not feeling hungry, just feeling terrible about it. And then absolutely just crumbling. And as badly as I could imagine it going, that's how badly it went. And I think I'd set myself up with a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that experience was just really stage fright, anxiety, and it was a horrible experience. And I left school again with some good GCSE results, but not prepared for the working world. And I just thought it'll get better as I get older. I'll just magically find this confidence as I become an adult. And a couple of other things happened that meant that wasn't going to happen for me. So I managed to get a date at 17. Now, if you don't believe in a God or miracles, there's all the evidence you need. And we went to the restaurant, and the chicken arrived, and it was pink in the middle. And my first date nerves were already jangling because the only thing that was mutual was the silence. And I've got this moment I can still remember where I'm looking at this chicken and I'm thinking to myself, just risk it, just eat it, because the alternative is to have a conversation, and I don't want to do that because it's already an uncomfortable situation. So I swallowed my courage and I swallowed the chicken and ended up with food poisoning. And I didn't tell the girl about what had happened until after we got married 4 years later.
Wow, so she stuck around.
She stuck around. We were both introverts. We fit well with each other. But I was so scared to tell her and admit to her that that's how scared I was. And as a newly married man with a new job in marketing, I was just about getting settled into marriage, and then suddenly my operations director at work comes across and says, "From Monday next week, you're going to spend 2 days a week on the phone cold calling customers because we're short-staffed on the sales team." And that was not what I signed up for. And so I left that job, and I'm sitting there at 21 in a small bungalow in South Leeds with no job, no income, and a new wife to provide for and to work with, and just absolutely questioning, where is my life going? And I said that to her. I said, I don't know where this is going. I don't know where my next job's coming from. I don't know where income's coming from. Um, and I'd understand if you feel like you've made a mistake with me. And we're 21, you've still got your whole life. If you want to call this quits now and go find someone who can offer you more than I can, then I wouldn't blame you. And I half expected her to turn around and say, "That's really kind of you to offer. I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to go." But instead, she said something that absolutely floored me, and I've never forgotten it since. She said, "I didn't marry you for what you could do, what you could make. I married you for who you are. And I don't know how long it's going to take for you to figure out what you're supposed to do, but I believe in you and I will support you and I'll stick with you for as long as it takes for you to discover what that is." And we're 11 years in now and nearly 3 children because we've got our third baby due in September.
Amazing.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But she set me on a path that day by believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. And so the first tip I would give to anyone is, if you want to conquer something and you want to move on to the next stage, you have got to find someone who believes in you more sometimes than you believe in yourself. And they sometimes just lift you to a point where you can start to become self-sustaining and get that process started. Then you can do things for yourself. But sometimes you just need that someone to give you that friendly little push to
Yeah,
get you.
you do need to borrow somebody else's confidence sometimes, don't you? But what a fantastic story. And how awesome is your wife?
I've won a lottery. If I never win anything else in life, I've won that one, and I'm very fortunate. She's been a huge support to me the whole way through, and just to kind of put that in context, she set me on a course. I joined a couple of public speaking clubs, really focused on the mentoring, the development, and built my speaking gradually over time. She told me I needed to have a career in education. And that's where she put me and where she could see me fit in. And I thought, you know what, I'll take you up on that. So I've spent the last 11 years in education, in various roles, currently working on a teaching and learning team um, in an academy in Wakefield. But this last year has been a difficult one for us, and there have been a few things that have happened within our family. Obviously, naturally, we said the pregnancy, and my wife's had a health condition that we've been managing. And things haven't quite worked this year. And at this point in my life, at 32, and with third child on the way, we've made the difficult but quite exciting decision that I'm going to leave education this year, and I'm undertaking the kind of work we're talking about now as my main vocation. I want to coach people. I want to go into to companies and universities and do all this wonderful stuff. So it's a big jump, but it's an exciting jump. But the fact that she's been so supportive of that
Mm,
is really testament to her faith in me, but also the fact that I have to pay that to her because
yeah.
her that's encouraged me on this journey, and the fact that she's now able to support me in jumping to do something full time that I never thought I would do is just such a, a calming and wonderful place to be.
Yeah, how wonderful and how exciting. So you did actually find your purpose. You did find what you're supposed to be. Um, and sometimes, we do take the scenic route, and I'm not that I think I'm quite a fan of the scenic route because it might feel long-winded and like you're finding your way, but actually all that learning, because you'll have picked up so much learning being in education, especially speaking in front of kids and staff and all the rest, and parents as well, all throughout those 11 years, that it's actually, again, a gift, isn't it?
Mm. You've hit something really profound there, which with education, you never know from day to day how many kids you're going to have in the room, which rooms you're going to be in, whether you're going to be delivering an assembly in the dining hall or in a big auditorium space, speaking to parents on the phone, training staff in a small classroom or a bigger space. You just never know from day to day exactly what your voice is going to be required to do and what
Mhm.
kind of message you're going to be required to deliver to which kind of audience. So whenever you throw additional variables in there and they change, and sometimes change quite frequently, that can be really anxiety inducing.
Mhm.
But 11 years of that, and I've kind of got to a point where I think I can now adapt. I've
Yes.
got things in my locker that I've learned that I've put in my toolkit that I can pull out, and I can use them at different times to help information land more successfully
Mhm.
and deliver key messages in a way that, is suitable for different audiences. And I think that's really added a few strings to my bow that, will help me in what I deliver, but also help the people that I coach as well.
Yeah. So you've been on quite a journey. You've been through fear and anxiety about speaking, especially as you had that difficult experience as a kid as well. So if testament to you, right, Simon, that you actually took that and did something with it. Right, you could have easily used that as a reason, and it's a valid reason that this is just not for me. I don't do it. And I hear people all the time say to me, "Oh, I wish I could get up and speak like what you do, but I'm just not confident." And that's the thing, isn't it? That we can we can use that as an excuse or a reason that actually I'm just not confident, in to do this. So it's just not me. I don't need to try. I don't feel as though it's a skill that I can develop. It's just not something that I'm going to pursue. Um, so obviously you're not scared anymore. You can do it, which is amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes I still occasionally have to say to myself, you are doing this. You can't because that imposter syndrome will continually kind of come
Mm.
back from time to time and have a go at you. And I saw Penny Haslam at the PSA speak about this just recently, talking about that inner voice, that
Mm.
negative inner dialogue that will tell you you can't do it, you don't deserve it, someone else can do it better than you. Everything in life, somebody can do it better than me. But
Oh
if
yeah.
that gives me a reason not to try, then my life's going to be a shadow of what it can be. I don't care if I'm as good as the next person. Am I doing the best that I'm capable of doing? And the more I practice and the more experience I get, the better my best gets. So I'm in
Mm,
competition with myself. There are always going to be people out there who know more than I do. I'm
mm.
learning from them. And if they help me to become a better version of me, then that's what this is all about.
Exactly. And that's just how our brain works. I think we need to really kind of really understand that. And if you've been listening to this podcast a while, I bang on about this a lot, that it's just how our brain works. Every time we up level, our subconscious mind has a bit of a meltdown, doesn't know that it can keep you safe, and it throws some stuff at you, and it knows what stuff to throw at you because it's your brain. And so it's no surprise that every time you up level, you might get that inner critic going, what are you doing? You can't do this. There's somebody else that can do it better, and all the stuff. Yeah. Or you get that imposter feeling, or you, other things will happen. You'll start to think, oh, you might self-sabotage in some way, and that's unique to each and every one of us. We do it in a different way. But it's about just recognizing that, isn't it? And knowing that it's a sign of growth and not a sign that you're not doing the right thing or that you can't do it.
Mm, mm. And if there's one thing that we've learned over the last few years, especially with the pandemic, it's that life is fragile. Life is short, and you never know when it's all going to change on you.
Mhm.
And when you think about, things in life that people have lost, or people that, have been without something, it's kind of how much pain does that cause you not to have that thing. And there are certain things in life that it's okay to lose and you can get them back. But one thing that if you've lost or you've never had it is the ability to communicate your feelings or being able to share a message of value, and you've not got currently got the courage to be able to go into those spaces and speak up. How much pain is that causing you? How much are you losing because of that?
Mm.
And for me, that's where the tipping point happened, is
Yeah.
my communication skills are something that I cannot afford to go through life without.
Yes.
And so, there are things in my life that I consider to be a luxury. Like, I have such a love and respect for people who can speak languages, right? I love doing French and Spanish at school. I still remember tiny bits of it. I'd love to learn a language, and that's something that I will keep returning to in my life, and I'll keep trying with it. And I may lose a few opportunities because of that. But if I can't learn to have a meaningful conversation and interact with somebody in my own language, that's going to cost me far more. So I have to do kind of a cost benefit analysis and say to myself, right, communication skills, absolutely vital. So I'm going to spend a lot of time developing those. Other things may come along that are luxuries, but life's too short not to be able to speak to somebody else and
Absolutely.
share your value with them or glean value from someone else. Everything meaningful that's happened in my life in the last 10, 15 years happened through a conversation.
Yeah. And you're so true, because I can remember so many times where somebody speaking has had an impact on me. So they might have said something. And it might have been, they might have been doing a talk, or they might have been just having a conversation like what we're doing now, but it's had a profound impact on me. And then there's that ripple effect. And I love that term. And again, I talk about that a lot, where I start doing something different or showing up in a different way or change my mind about something. Yeah, which is such an amazing thing to do, to change, help somebody change their mind or learn something or just think about something differently. And all of a sudden, it could impact their entire trajectory of their life, and you might not ever know about it. And
Mm,
this is why it's so powerful.
mm,
I just love it. So when just to kind of jump on your fear bandwagon, so you're not alone. I had a similar, well, I had an experience where I had stage fright. So I wasn't like you. I was all right speaking in front of people when I was a kid. I was one of those kids that liked drama, and I was always in plays and stuff. So I found it always very easy, right the way through university, and then I started doing in people development and training people and speaking in front of people. It was never an issue for me. So I was always quite confident speaking in front of people until I left corporate, started a business, which is great. Right, it was great for 5 years. I closed that business down, started my own business as me, the business that I'm in now. And all of a sudden I started getting stage fright. So it came out of the blue for me. And that was a real shock to the system. So I remember I was doing an event, I was speaking, and all of a sudden I thought I had butterflies in my stomach. That was new. That hadn't happened for me before. My palms were sweaty. That was new. My breath was shallow. I couldn't remember what I was supposed to say. My mind went blank. All of these classic fear symptoms that we can talk about. And I thought, oh, it's just a blip. And then it went on, and then it went on. And I remember somebody phoning me to book an event. And I'd started dreading speaking, and I thought, right, okay, I've got a decision to make now. If I say no, and I really wanted to say no, Simon, if I say no, then I need to find something else to do,
Mhm.
or I can really do something about it now. So I said, okay, can we do it in a few months' time? Because I'm booked up, which was quite true. So I bought myself a bit of time. And then I did things like I went right back to basics and I went to Toastmasters and I started doing all sorts of different things, which we can come to. But created a development plan for myself, and I
Mm.
made a whole experiment just to get me back where I wanted to be.
Mm.
And so that's the thing. So you might be listening to this thinking, having an experience like you where you've always been afraid, or you might have an experience like me where as you've grown, as you've been promoted, or through your career, and the pressure started to heat up a little bit. All of a sudden, it's getting a bit much. So either camp, this is for you,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, really, really agree with that. And I think there's something really important to say around the mindset when you're trying to get on this journey and make progress. I've got a wonderful friend called Tom English who does a lot of work around stewardship. And he says you start with stewardship of self. And one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about, and I don't know why, because when you look at the world, when you look at great sports people, great musicians, great actors, all the people who we admire who are really successful, whenever they achieve anything, they always thank the people who coached them. They always thank
Mhm.
the people they've worked with. Now, I think a lot of us are scared to invest in our own development. And I wonder if there's a subconscious thing kind of going, I don't think I deserve that investment.
Mm,
There's a lack of value that people place on themselves.
yes.
This is why I love what Tom does. He talks about stewardship of self. So very early on in my speaking journey, I had to make some tough decisions about undertaking my own development. And I was going to have to invest in it financially. And at the time, we weren't particularly well off. And me paying for a monthly subscription to go to a speaking club was a hit for us.
Mm.
And it was a couple of hours on a weeknight, every week or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And I thought to myself, it would be very easy to look at that investment of time and money as selfishness, and because I'm doing it for me. But it's stewardship of self. Because what better contribution will I then be able to make because I've made that investment? I'm upskilling, I'm learning more, and therefore I'll be a better husband because I can communicate with my wife better. I'll be a better father for my children. I'll be a better employee. I'll be a better, relative, whatever
All of
capacity
that
you put
stuff.
me in, I'm better. So what I want people to think about is when you're thinking about investing in yourself and your own development, stop thinking that you're not worth it. Stop, thinking about the fact, oh, I don't know if I deserve. It might be a sacrifice, but think about it this way. If you don't make that investment, you will never be any better than you are now. And so what you're actually doing by not investing in yourself is depriving everyone in your life of a better version of you. And that's the way I looked at it. And that's the way I thought to myself, do you know what? Is X amount a month and 2 hours a week worth it for better stewardship of self and better contribution to every other facet of my life? It then became a no-brainer. And when I started that process, I made myself two promises, which is one, if I ever go to an event, I will always speak to someone or contribute in some way because I'm not going there to be a passive observer because I'm invested now. And the other thing I promised myself is that I will always take and implement one piece of feedback.
Mhm.
Someone that give me something to work on, something to do. I'll take it and I'll do it. And I did that when I joined Toastmasters. I did that tenaciously for 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, I became the UK and Ireland evaluation champion. So it works, but it only works if you invest, if you commit, and if you're tenacious and you're relentless with it. And that's where a lot of people fall down. I mean, James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits. You get that process where you start implementing a new habit, you get that little dip, and you think, I'm not sure this is going to work. I don't really like where it's going. and then you stop right before you hit through that ceiling. And sometimes you're just saying to somebody, have you been doing the right thing? Have you been doing it regularly enough? Have you been doing it for long enough?
Hmm.
And if you can say yes to all those three things, you don't need to worry about the progress you're making because you'll see it.
It's so true, so true. And I completely agree with what you said about having the courage to invest in yourself. And if you work in an organization, often I see people waiting to either be given that opportunity by their employer and having that development. And if you get that, amazing. That's fantastic. I used to love that. I was in people development. I've been in people development for nearly 3 decades. So if you get the opportunity at work, happy days. It's literally a gift, right? But if you're not getting it, then go look for it. You should never abdicate your development. Is that the right word? Yeah. So yeah, you shouldn't, it should be yours. You should be the CEO of your own development.
That's a really nice way to put it. Yeah. And I think sometimes people again feel this level of guilt that, oh, my employer's not investing in it, and therefore, maybe I'm not seen as valuable enough to deserve that opportunity or whatever. I remember a funny kind of little anecdote thing I read online once about a conversation between a CEO and a HR manager, where the CEO is speaking to them over lunch or whatever it is, and the HR manager says to the CEO, "What happens if we invest all of this money in people and all this trading in people and they leave us?" And then the CEO turns around and says, "Yeah, but what happens if we don't and they stay?"
Yeah,
And I
exactly
think
that.
that's such an interesting thing is that, sometimes we're scared to put all this stuff into ourselves in fear that things might change. But Stephen Bartlett talks about it. He talks about having buckets in your life, and the two buckets that you cannot have somebody empty are your knowledge and your skills.
Yes.
Right? Everything else, your resources, whatever else, people can empty that, your reputation, people can take that off you. But if you've got the knowledge and you've got the skills, you can start from anywhere and you can
Yeah.
build it back. So if there's two things you're constantly needing to work on, knowledge, skills,
Absolutely, absolutely. It is very much about looking at where you need to develop and then mapping it out. And it is something that I've done for a long time, but certainly with regards to my speaking, I sat down and I created a development plan and I called it the speaking experiment, right? So there was and I love doing experiments in my business and just in my life because it takes away the pressure. There's no success, there's no failure. It's all just results, and it enables you to be braver, and just step outside of your comfort zone because you're actively looking for results. And then as we know, when you start actively looking for results, you start seeing evidence. And when you start seeing evidence of things going right, you start to get that confidence, as you said at the very beginning of this session. And lo and behold, you get that momentum and things get good and things get better and better and better. So let's look at some practical tips on what we can do to move past this fear. So we're going to catapult ourselves back to when we've had this fear, and hopefully by the end of this podcast episode, you might have the outline of your own experiment and think, okay, I'm going to go for it. If you want to, start and have a go at yourself. So we've recognized that we've got this fear, all the fears coming up, and we're starting to dread it. And you can start to feel yourself saying no to opportunities, like what you did back in your marketing days. You left the company, you made the ultimate sacrifice, didn't you? You were like, nope, I'm off. Goodbye. Mic drop. Simon's out. And we don't want it to get to that point. That's a bit drastic. So what can we do instead when we're getting this fear?
So in all conversations that I've had with people, regardless of sector, regardless of experience, there are four main reasons why people fear it. And the first thing you have to work out is, where is that trigger? Where is it coming from? And handily, there's a little mnemonic that I use, which is fear. So FEANR. So you've got four reasons. F is for failure, right? That could come from a childhood experience of, I put my hand up in class to answer a question and the teacher said, nope, that's the wrong answer, right? A time where you've experienced getting it wrong And the other problem that we've got is that because of the internet and social media, right, we are able to look at other people's highlight reels and the best moments of their 40-year careers all put together in one neat little video, and we never see the failures in between.
Mhm.
So we get this feedback from the world that, oh, other people are amazingly successful and we never see them fail. But we fail, and when we do, it really hurts us and we don't know how to recover from it. So we're afraid of making mistakes. We're also afraid that mistakes will see us suffer with our reputation and struggle to fit in. You know, that comes in a bit later, but there's all kinds of things that we attach to success and failure. And the E is for expectations. And what tends to happen is that we set far too high expectations of ourselves, and we're perfectionists and we're conscientious. We really want to be successful, but because we haven't got anything to attach that to, we say, well, I've seen someone else do this. I've seen a president do this, or I've seen, an amazing person achieve it this way. So that's my expectation. I made that mistake watching the Olympic 100-meter final and then thinking I could run 100 meters in 9 seconds, and I couldn't. Well, of course I can't. I'm not an Olympic athlete. So you have to put your expectations where you're starting from and make the jumps incremental. So easy that you can't not do the next thing and the next thing. And eventually you might get up there, but you can't have a jump like that and expect yourself to make it. You've got to do the steps. So keep your expectations real, I think is a real one. That's the one I've always struggled with. A is for adequacy, comparison. So we're talking about that idea of going on social media, seeing somebody else and going, oh, they're amazing. But yeah, they might be on chapter 28 and you might be on chapter 2. So be fair to yourself and only compare to yourself against your own level of performance from last time. And that's why I love having a development plan. I have a speaker's journal. So I
Mhm.
write down all my notes, my presentations, what I want to get out of it, what I'm looking to achieve, what went well afterwards, what do I want to work on next time, what am I taking forward, and then I do the next plan. But when I'm planning the next presentation, I'm informed by the previous one.
Yes.
So it becomes a cycle. So I'm only ever comparing against my last presentation. That really helps. And then the R is for rejection. We hate the idea of making a mistake in front of people. And obviously then you've got your kind of prehistoric biochemical reactions about, adrenaline, and I'm going to be left to the elements and predators and starvation. Our society's evolved incredibly, but our biochemistry really hasn't. So we often attach life or death threat levels to public speaking. And so you've got to work out where that's coming from. And generally speaking, in a lot of the experiences I've had, it comes from an exacerbated, untrue perception of ourselves, usually kept by a really tiny experience that from the past that everyone else will have forgotten about except you. I bet you nobody else in my old year 11 class from 15 years ago thinks about that assembly that I spoke in. It crops up in my mind probably 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking to myself, that's an experience I hang to, but why? It's just a negative cycle. And what I'm getting better at now, and you've mentioned this, is having that mental filing cabinet that you can pull open. And as soon as you have a positive experience or an interaction where somebody says, thank you for saying that, or thank you for delivering that, that was really helpful. Or you get an email of appreciation, save them in a folder, keep them to one side. I've got a folder full of postcards from students because I need those because they are mental filing cabinet or physical filing cabinet things I can look at to say I did something good that day.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get that evidence in front of you, you can say, no, this in a dialogue needs to stop now because it's coming from an unhealthy place, wherever it's coming from, and it's untrue. So you confront it where it is and we break it. And once we get better at doing that and quietening that inner dialogue, we're so much easier to try and get back into the process. And when you're preparing a presentation, a lot of people think, oh, the preparation is the writing up of some 3x5 cards and then delivery on the day. Preparation starts way before that.
Mm.
And the hardest audience is you. The
Yeah.
hardest audience is the one in the mirror. If you can speak to that audience and quiet that voice, there's nothing in a room that's going to happen that's going to be more difficult than that.
So true. Loads to unpick there, which is great. So I kind of want to go right back. We're going to go through your model again. But I want to kind of pick up on expectations because this is such a powerful one, isn't it? About the expectations. What do we personally expect? And it's that feeling of, when you mentioned comparing yourself to an Olympic athlete. And instantly, as soon as you said that, Simon, I was catapulted back to being about, I don't know how old, a kid, when my brother watched Karate Kid, and he became like, I don't know, what was he called? The karate. Well, he was the Karate Kid because he had high expectations of himself as being able to, he was a black belt at karate straight away. But we all do that. We look at, because of social media, we all look at people and think, okay, I need to be up there. Simon's an amazing speaker, so I need to be up there. Barbara's doing speaking in front of us. She's confident about speaking. We must be up there. Instead of thinking that you can't climb a mountain in one leap, it's all those teeny tiny steps. And when we do those tiny steps, when we create those tiny steps, we acclimatize so much easier to that next level because our brain doesn't have a meltdown. It goes, okay, this is normal. This is just tiny. We can do this. Yeah. So it's about shrinking everything down to make teeny tiny steps, right? And those will all add up.
Mm. Go back to the metaphor of driving a car, right? Those people that drive. The first time I sat in a car at 17, I remember because my dad took me out. He was the one who was teaching me to drive.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the driver's seat, looking at steering wheel, buttons, gears, handbrake, indicator, the whole setup. And I remember looking at it thinking, how will I ever get this car to drive anywhere?
Yeah.
I realized I've been taking it for granted. My parents have been driving me around and they'd just been doing it and I've not been paying attention. And suddenly I was having to do it and I was thinking to myself, uh, and everybody who's learning to drive will know that there are, stallings and there's roundabouts and there's grate covers and there's curbs and all sorts of things that you get wrong. And there's tears and there's frustration until you finally get that pink license in your hand. And then you'll eventually get to a point where you'll get in your car, you'll drive to work or you'll drive home, you switch off the ignition, you go in the house and you suddenly go, I'm home.
Yeah.
How did I get here? And people sometimes don't believe me when I say this. Public speaking and presenting in an effective, engaging way is exactly the same. You sometimes think about a presentation and you think, I've got to make eye contact, I've got to breathe, I've got to move, I've got to do gestures, I've got to structure it, I've got to pace myself, I've got to pause, I've got to make sure I repeat that point and I've got to come back to that at the end. And it feels overwhelming. There's too much to do. Of course, there's too much to do, right? So you focus on the one thing you know you need at that particular point. So when I started speaking, there was too much to do. There was too many skills, but I was speaking way too quickly. I used far too many filler words, and those were my habits that I needed to work on. So my coach, my mentor was saying to me, slow down and try to pause more. And you'll eventually drop those fillers and your sentences will become much smoother
Mm.
and your points will become much more coherent. And
Yeah.
so for months, probably a few months, all I worked on, slow down, pause more. That
Yeah.
was it. And eventually I found myself being able to construct the next thought quicker because I was
Yeah.
giving my brain more thinking time. And then gradually there were other habits, right? Stop walking around in a square, stand still, move this way. And eventually you get to a point where you get up, you speak, you get a nice little round of applause at the end if you've done well, and you sit down and you suddenly go, that's been an hour.
And
That's how it
didn't
happened.
die. Yeah, I didn't die. I'm still here. Yeah, and it's so true. And again, I'm thinking back to when I was relearning how to speak and I went to Toastmasters. And my one thing that I wanted to work on was just stand on the stage. Just stand on the stage. I said to everybody, I'm not bothered about what I say. Forgive what I say. That's not important to me today. I just need to get comfortable with owning my space up here without freaking out. And that's what I did for a couple of weeks, just getting comfortable. And that was it. Tick, it was a tick in the box once I owned it. It's almost like gamifying it. This is the first rung of the ladder. Great, well done. What's the next rung of the ladder? Right. And you had no more filler words and then not moving around in a square. For me, it was pacing up and down. So that it's getting that feedback and then going, okay, it's safe for me to learn. It's safe for me to be a beginner. It's safe for me to practice. And this is just the one tiny thing that I'm going to work on. And I'll keep working on it until I've done that one thing. Tick in the box. Right, what's next? What's the next rung?
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. And it's giving yourself the time and the space and the freedom to be able to undertake that journey. And that's not to say that it's going to be a smooth journey. That's not to say that you're not occasionally going to hit a setback. You know, look at the greatest sports teams. They lose matches, right? Sometimes they lose a few in a row. But then it's thinking, right, what can I do? What habits have I got? What tools have I got? What resilience have I got to be able to get back to winning ways as quickly as possible?
Mm,
Right? I've had presentations that have flopped. You
yeah.
know, this is what I do for a job, and I don't get it right all the time. And I think to myself, okay, that didn't land as well. Did I not plan for my audience well enough? Did I not, think about exactly what examples I was using? Did I run over time on that one? Did I not, and you've got to continually tweak.
Mm,
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So it's just being patient with yourself long enough to say, do you know what? Yeah, that didn't work as well as I thought.
yeah.
Output that bit better. And it gets better every time, but you've got to not crush yourself before you get a chance to make the improvement.
This is so true. And this is where the evidence comes in. So your filing cabinet of all your postcards that you've had from your students, I created a celebration journal and I've done it for years. It's something that I talk to all of my clients about. It's a notebook at the side of my bed. And before I turn the light off and go to sleep, I write down at least 3 things that I'm celebrating for that day. And there are days when you've got loads to celebrate. Yeah, you've had a great day. And then there are days when the most thing is, oh, somebody made me a cup of tea, or you had a great sandwich at lunchtime. But when it comes to speaking, when I was going through this journey, I started to catch myself doing things right. It's the old Ken Blanchard saying, which is I absolutely love. Look for people doing things right. And I always think, right, how can you look for things that you're doing right to silence that inner critic? So what did you do in that speech that you did today or in that meeting that was right? And I just want to again just go back a step, Simon, because sometimes it's not about just standing up in front of people. It might be speaking in a meeting. It might be having the courage to have that difficult conversation. It could, this transforms so many things in the workplace, but it's about looking for those pieces of evidence where you did it and
Mm.
it went okay.
Mm. Yeah, and I've been quite privileged this year to work with some Year 11 students, our student leadership team, the head boy and girl, and so on. And what I've really loved about that is that I remember how I felt 15 years ago as the head boy, how inadequate I felt, and I just thought, you know what, this is a lovely kind of pay it forward moment.
Oh, how nice.
And
Full circle.
yeah, and they came to me, the head boy and girl, and said, one of the things we really want to work on is public speaking and confidence.
Oh,
Oh, this is such a moment. And I said, how good that you've come and said that's something you want to work on because they can see that that's what the job market's looking for. So they said, can we find an opportunity to speak? So we spoke to the principal and we said, well, if I help them prepare a speech, could they deliver it? And they went away and wrote the speech. We rehearsed it together. We worked out parts and separated it out and talked about the structure. And they delivered that speech to 750 parents,
oh, awesome.
250, three occasions throughout the evening.
So
I'm
good.
so proud of them. But what I loved about that was that they were courageous enough to say, let's do that. And then they had some support, but they took that opportunity. And one of the other things I've done this year as part of that process is we've had quite regular student panel meetings. So when there are issues in school we want to address or we want to improve the way the school runs or any issues that students want to bring, they come to a panel meeting. But the Year 11 student leaders chair that meeting. So I'm in there as kind of a body for safeguarding reasons, but I don't contribute a lot to those meetings. I can hand it over. But what we have created, and I think this might be quite useful, is on the agenda, on the back, we've got stems that the students can use when they want to chip in, want to say something. Because sometimes one of the things that you're scared about in a meeting is I want to step in, but I don't quite know how to do
Yes.
that in a way that's smooth, in a way that doesn't make me look like a bumbling fool. So one of the things we've done is we've prepared these stems. And so we've said, if you want to step into the conversation, here are some things you can say. Just things like, if I may add, right? Just something to get you in. If you want to show agreement, if you want to show disagreement, if you want to change the subject and introduce a new point, we've just got a few little stems for each thing.
Nice.
And do you know what was really lovely is I listened to 12, 13, 14-year-old students have a really mature, sensible discussion and debate about really pivotal issues that the school was facing with things like, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'd just like to add, or if I can just step in and say this. And they had it was such a professional discussion just because they'd been given a platform, the time and the space, they felt safe, and they'd been given some tools. And as soon as they had those things, they shone. And I
Yeah,
think sometimes it's just having a combination of those things.
yeah, I agree.
You're all right.
Yeah, and seizing the opportunity. That's such a key one. So when the opportunity does arise for that meeting or that conversation, or somebody says, we've got a presentation, do you want to do it? It's a yes. Yeah, it's a yes. And you might panic, but it's those opportunities that'll really help you grow.
I think it was Richard Branson, wasn't it, who said,
Yeah.
say yes first and then figure out how you're going to do it later.
Right. No, exactly that, exactly that. And it works. Yeah, so many really, really good tools here. So, and I've just looked at the time. So I do this every time, I look at the time, and go, geez, I could have about 3 hours with every single guest, and you're no exception, Simon. I could talk to you for ages. So, okay, if we can just have three main takeaways, then, if somebody was going to do nothing else but these three things, what do you reckon? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
The first thing you've got to do is get control of your conversation in your mind. Far too many people think far too negatively, far too much of the time. I was in a therapy session quite a while ago where I was being very negative, and the therapist suddenly stopped me and interrupted me. And I don't think therapists are usually supposed to do that, but I think this one had just had enough of listening to my drivel, and said, I'm going to ask you three questions. And they said, the first one, who's telling you that? Where's that coming from? What's the source of that information? And then the second question was, is there any evidence to support what you've just said about yourself? And the third one is, are you going to respond, or are you going to cut the thought train? And I still ask myself those three questions a decade later
Hmm.
because they're so profound. And it's a way of just you wrestling control of that conversation. So when you're thinking negatively about yourself, who's telling me that? Right? Is it coming from a source, a real person in the real world for a real reason? Or is it just me having a really down time in myself? And if it's coming from you, then you say, where's the evidence? Right? Is there a real world thing that's happening that proves what I'm saying about myself? If there is, I need to fix it. Right? If there's a real world problem that I've caused, I need to deal with that. But 90% of the time, there's no evidence for it. It's just you
Hmm.
thinking negatively because you've perpetuated something. So then the question is, do I need to do something about this? Or do I need to say goodbye and think about something healthier? Get control of that conversation. That's number one, because you can't project an important message of value if you're inwardly storing negativity. Because if you go into an interaction with a negative self-perception, all you're going to do is project that negativity onto someone else. And then they're not going to want to talk to you or engage with you or buy any of your stuff. So get control of the conversation. That's
Yeah.
that's the first tip. Second tip is do your homework. And what I mean by that is I once watched an episode of Top Gear, one of the old episodes, and they were racing a rally car against a Norwegian bobsled down an ice chute. And the driver of the bobsled was spinning around in circles with his eyes closed. And one of the presenters said, what on earth is he doing? And he said, he's currently visualizing the course in his head. Right? It's a 1.2 mile circuit and he knows all the corners.
Hmm.
Your mind is a really powerful thing. So do your homework, right? If you can see the space, go see the space. Visualize the space. Visualize yourself in the space doing a good job. Where do you move? Where do you go? Who do you look at? Visualize, warmth. Visualize it actually going successfully. And you know what? It might not be perfect, but if you visualize it going okay, it will probably go okay. If you visualize it going terribly, you'll live into that reality. So do your homework, but do your mental homework. Your mind's a really powerful thing. And the third thing is you've got to land in between crushing self-criticism and complacency, right? I call it confident humility in the middle. So crushing self-criticism gives yourself so much to do that you're paralyzed. Complacency gives you nothing to do, so you don't grow. Confident humility is I'm stepping into a space where I'm going to contribute something because I am a valuable person with a message to share, but I'm also going to learn something. And I'm going to take away one thing to be proud of and write it in my celebration journal. I'm going to take away one thing I need to learn. And I'm going to write that down too. and then I'm going to make progress based on that thing and hold myself accountable for that progress. So get hold of your conversation, do your homework, and make sure that when you step into that space, you keep yourself mentally in a position where you're allowing yourself to grow. And that's all I can say.
Amazing, amazing. Where can people find you, Simon?
So as of present, I am at speakwithsimon.co.uk. So that's my website, and my email address is you just stick a Simon on front of that. So simon@speakwithsimon.co.uk. And all my details are on the website. You can get in touch anytime about anything. Happy to come and do some coaching, some training, some speaking, whatever you want me to do.
Brilliant, amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, Barbara.